Africa zombie. Zombie never turns unless you tell it turn. Zombie. Hey guys, welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How you doing?
How are you?
I'm doing great. Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you very well, thank you. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
Amazing. How are you?
I'm doing good. I've been doing good. There's been a lot going on, for everyone. So,
Like, can you go into details? What's been going on? Things that you can share.
for right now, I'm working on a couple of things. Some of them I'm not meant to really
Expose, yeah.
announce them. Yeah. But working on a solo for me, photography. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, doing some writing projects and also working on the body of work. And I have a solo in Africa, somewhere in Africa, at the end of the year, painting. So it's exciting.
Amazing. So, part of this whole live situation is to speak about what we're experiencing during COVID.
Mm,
We start off with those questions, and then we get into more of a, detailed conversation about thoughts and activities and behaviors and so on and so forth. So, I think it's been a year this week since COVID hit the headlines last year.
yeah.
How has your perception of yourself and your work changed since?
It's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. But before we go on, I should ask you, how are you doing? What's going on with you right now?
I'm very well. It's good to see you. It's good to be with you. Currently, I am sorting out stuff to do with, my university return in September, October time, and getting projects on the way, seeing who I could collaborate with. Um, that sort of thing is what's going on with me currently.
Nice, nice. That's great to hear. Since the pandemic, a lot has changed. For me, during the pandemic was when I in the beginning months of the pandemic was when I transitioned to be a full-time artist. So that's a big change for me. Um, before I used to be an educator, like a teacher of teaching kids and youths, and I decided to stop because I didn't want to do it online. There was something about um, what I was doing at the mode of how I was teaching that was kind of really, really impressive. So, um, yeah, so I decided to become a full-time artist, and I still do some engagements on contract basis, but not really like employed again. Um, but it's been amazing, and it's just covered itself. But in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of uncertainty, and fear because of as artists, so it's a lot of like confusion on what will happen. But it looks like the art world or the art scene has managed to thrive, and also managed to thrive on the local level, but also even more on a global scale. Hence, I'm talking to you right now. Like there's
Yeah.
super connection that happened. That's also like burnout of the pandemic.
Everything you've spoken about, people entering into transitions and facing the fear and uncertainty a pandemic can bring. I remember previously there was all sorts of talks about Mercury being in retrograde Do you understand what I mean when I say that?
Yeah, yeah.
Mercury's in retrograde, Mercury's in retrograde. The end is coming, the end is coming. And it's just shown that if we get to a point where Mercury is in retrograde in terms of the way in which our our lives are being governed and the way in which we are sort of living out our day-to-day existences, that despite adversity we can overcome um, in the most wide way possible. Just think about the fact that within a year, a vaccine has been found, sort of confounding everyone's expectations scientifically and in terms of advances. But I don't want to dwell on that. I want to work out a little bit more about so you said that there's a moment in which you transitioned to being a full-time artist because you no longer wanted to teach um, youths online because it's a stressful affair at the most of times trying to teach them whilst you're in their presence, because I've also been an educator myself for kids. So I totally understand when you said, okay, this online thing is it's definitely not going to work out. Would you like to give us more of your thoughts on that, as in how that decision was made and how you unpacked it?
So like I was still, yeah, uh, my teaching, my the way I tutor, the way I teach, it's more of like, it's hands-on. It's kind of us having fun, making collages, making lots of stuff, pushing boundaries when it comes to like, material and meaning and a lot of stuff. And we have these conversations that only make sense to me when it's hands-on. And the online stuff is a great thing for you to still be like, engaged, with arts online. And some of my friends, or some of people I know, my colleagues, continued in the online, which is great. But it wasn't just for me. It wasn't real for me. So I, instead, went in once a while to just volunteer to make art kits. Kind of like the back scene. We make art kits and we send to kids in their house.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was kind of like a better option for me, because of like the online option for teaching didn't even feel real to me. It felt very artificial for me, but it made sense for a couple people. So I kind of like maybe gave space for other people to take over that like position. Um, but there was a lot of like stuff also opening up for me when it comes to engagement and opportunities. And I was still doing a lot of like my educating right now since the pandemic, or since I made that transition, has been more of a professional, like not more youth, but like artists giving seminars, talks, being on panels and stuff like that. So there's
Mm.
still that engagement, but on a contract basis, not like a payroll basis anymore.
I would love to discuss with you the sort of pedagogical relationship, or the difference in pedagogical relationship between um, you as a educator for kids and you as a more of a docent, more of a taking on more of a lecturing type position. Give us what you feel is a takeaway from that experience.
I would also say kids are kind of more open to exploring things and more open to new ideas. Uh, uh, Kids are more uh, um, apart from listening, listening and knowing what to do. Um, there's this thing that happens with youth where it's like they have their own ideas and they are ready to explore those ideas and bring it up, and like and I learn more as an educator when I'm with kids than when I'm with adults or when I'm teaching. Does that make sense? Because they
Mm-hmm.
have these ideas that are not yet suppressed, um, and just experimental ideas. I just want to like play with and stuff like that. Whereas like the adults kind of already know a lot, and they share ideas, but these ideas are based on if they are professional adults, then it's like you're pushing, you're making discussions and you're pushing already known ideas. But if they're like not professional adults, or like people who are like quite yeah, who are not like the I don't know if I'll say the layman, but like if it's the
Yeah, the layman.
yeah, the layman, it's kind of like you are it's one way, it's not symbiotic. You're just giving,
Mm.
and because they sincerely want to learn, but like they are not really open, or I don't know if it's confident to also add or to exchange, you know. I think it's like artists like is one field where uh it's not really uh, this is this or that is that square. It's always shifting, and like and that's one interesting thing about it. It's always reactive. So being with kids and also watching them, I watch kids a lot when it comes to technology, when it comes to like the way they express things, they express their thoughts. There's a lot to learn from young people.
There
Yeah.
really is. Um, Tell me more about how your practice has been dealing with um, the online space, because I realize that when you post your sort of updates, that they are in photo bumps.
Yeah, like dumps, yeah, video dumps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the truth is, in 2019, after my residency in South America, I decided to take off my work from my Instagram because of there was just this, uh, I would say, contention or push and pulls like within my head, and the idea of like uh, the consumption of arts like virtually, and the realness and the artificialness and love stuff. So yeah, I took up my work just for a while, and I was just making work and just being an artist, and maybe posting about like events um, or talks or whatnot on my Instagram
Hmm.
until 2019 ending to 2020 beginning, where my friend, who is also an artist, Ekene Maduka, um, um, spoke to me, and she was like, why have you not been posting? Like, over this year, I've gotten a lot of opportunities via Instagram. Like this very big person, this very big gallery reached out to me, via Instagram posting, and why you not posting and that one. So we had that very very deep conversation. We kind of went to like also the direction of the art world too, and how I just had my opinions then. So I started posting. Well, I wanted to post in a way where it's like it's very non-serious and
Hmm.
very cool and not personal. So hence, like my style of posting was like I post a photograph or a work of mine, but post it along with just a lot of other stuff that are either um, funny or just like jovial. I don't know.
Um,
Stuff.
I find it very sort of heartening to see your posts. They have a levity to them, like it reminds me of creating an environment for your art to live. So in essence, you've created the environment in which you are inspired, isn't it?
Yes, I totally agree. And those videos are just videos that are on my gallery, by the way. Those are stuff I
Hmm.
enjoy. I love to see, and like it's also sharing and also getting people to um, and some of them are quite nuanced. Some of them are like Nigerian videos, so it's like only Nigerians understand. And some of them are quite general. Some of them are
Hmm.
quite related to the art world, So there's that interesting like conversation or dialogue, that happens when it's only poets that can understand something, or only somebody from somewhere that can understand something. It's like only a few
It's
people understand what NFT is, and like very Yeah, yeah, Jerry Gagosian's post has been just doing a lot of humor on that. So, um,
Mm. Because the way that I see it is, we met on Clubhouse, and just sticking on the theme of education, so I can bring it up to the. Um, how has Clubhouse changed or educated you in some way?
yeah, it's interesting. I love opinions on Clubhouse, and which I find like Clubhouse is quite interesting. I met a lot of people on Clubhouse. A lot of important people like you. And like just oh yeah, I love like very beautiful people. Like when I tell my friends about Clubhouse, I'm like, oh wow, like it's a space to like for me when I joined Clubhouse. I met fellow artists. I met curators. I met like gallery owners and magazine owners, and like there's pivotal parts of like the art scene and the art world. Um, and I kind of like people kind of table down like opinions or ideas that were like made me think like, oh wow, like yeah, I never thought of this, and like all this completes what I was thinking about before, or push my ideas. But also on the flip side too, there were other opinions also that I or maybe accepted generally, but I didn't really um, agree with particular things. But that's a beautiful thing about like that the platform was like you could agree with particular things and disagree. And you choose, right? You're not forced to be in a particular space, so you can choose where you want to be and um, but Clubhouse has been an interesting space, to be honest. Like, I've met amazing people, and also, especially when it comes to music and musicians, too. I've also met a lot of like particular musicians, jazz musicians on Clubhouse. Yeah,
I wanted to speak a little bit more about it because you describe yourself as being a song
yeah.
and a lyric, and I thought it would be interesting to ask you, why do you describe yourself as a song?
No, no. As like it's for my how yeah, it's interesting description or artist statements or artist bios are interesting because of like they are meant to pin you on a particular thing or a particular direction. Like he's a painter who does this, or he's a sculptor who does this, that, and like there's a definiteness and there's a sureness of what you are and whatnot. But I want to see myself as something that could be you know, as an interdisciplinary artist who kind of could employ any medium, at will to convey a particular message. I wanted to uh, describe myself as something. I wanted to see myself as something that could be expanded. Also as something that's transient to something that can move from place to place, something that's not fixed. Also because of I'm currently in Canada, which is like not like yeah, this is not my land basically, like it's like indigenous land. So wanting to kind of like instead of fixing myself in a particular position, I wanted to like stay afloat and be transient. um yeah, and also when I was thinking about it, a song was a very very great way of describing my existence in this space because of yeah, I really work with sound and music, so yeah, it only made sense.
Tell us more, as in, a sound is a wave. A sound can moves as particles, and it also vibrates. And I feel like when you describe yourself as a sound or a song, let me be more specific, you also put in an emphasis on musicality and language. And for the layman, I'm kind of referring to the thoughts of Mikhail Bakhtin, and also a little bit more to the thoughts of just general music theory. Music is something very similar to or very adjacent as an art form, very adjacent to our art world practice, especially as a working in the visual realm in terms of activation of the works and providing inspiration and also being a what do you call it, the artist's friend, because since the advent of having the ability to having an orchestra in your pocket like we have now, or a whole world in your pocket, you can transport yourself to so many different localities and have so many different ways of inspiring, that breath of air within yourself and exhaling your individual practice. And I wanted to get into a deeper discussion with that thought on just on your aesthetic and philosophical groundings, because where did you go to school, for example? Did you go to school professionally? Because your work is absolutely breathtaking. I hardly ever say that, but it really does hit a raw nerve in me, and I want to slightly unpack it with you.
Oh, thank you very much. That's you said a lot there. Thank you very
We
much.
can eat the elephant in small bits.
Yeah, yeah. So I start with saying yeah, I really enjoy how you kind of describe sound of music, or like just sound in general. Um yeah, it's something that is you know yeah, is a yeah, it's one thing that's really interesting, and one thing that's always been fascinating, or just a foundational fascination for me, is the ability to express yourself in sound, especially instrumental sound, and still like convey messages that are glaring, are very very vivid. Even there's also that tendency for you to not understand a language being spoken, you know, you know, like from a song, but you to still be immersed. And there's something you said about like transporting yourself into particular spaces, and making connections now. And I was thinking about the music of Amadou and Miriam, they're
Oh, I
Malian.
love Amadou and
Yeah,
Miriam. Yeah.
yeah, and like once I listen to them, like I always think about things. I always kind of make connection to like the work of Malik Sidibe, the Malian photographer too. So it's this. I always put it in context. So it's like I listen to this music, and I was like, oh, okay, it's probably maybe putting a picture into this context of this Malian musicians and artists that kind of lived not so far apart, when it comes to timeline. So it's like I started to think, were these people like feeding up each other? Like, was this some inspiration of that sort? Was this the kind of music that was playing in a Malik City based studio, or was this the photographs that like Amadou and Mariam would take, which was the kind of photographs they'll take on the album. It was like Malice DB type photographs. So like in that point, I'm immersing myself in another like dimension. Like I'm kind of thinking to a lot of things that makes me feel, or makes me really slightly experience Mali, even though it's pseudo, it's not real.
Mm.
So, so yeah. So it's interesting, but also most of my fascination has been with like instrumental music, especially jazz music, and how particular, vivid, and specific stories could be told with just instrumentation, and how feelings and narratives could be conveyed, in very particular ways. That are rooted not just from the air, but also rooted from references to sounds from particular places, and particular movements, and particular way you hit the drum, or particular way you like
Mm.
have particular things. Yeah. So and also how this is a language that's also speaking to each other, and all there's
It
always
is the speaking drum.
yeah. So like it's like there's that conversation always between hip hop and jazz and R&B, but also to like African music, and to indigenous music here. It's just a lot of stuff, and it's just a blessing or a privilege to be caught up into that conversation, or to enjoy, or to live with it, or to like walk out of, and to like analyze, theorize, or whatnot. Um, yeah, you also asked me a question about my educational background, and I almost done school at University of Manitoba, School of Fine Arts. Yeah. um, and yeah, it's an interesting space. Yeah, yeah,
Almost done?
yeah. Almost done school. Yeah.
Okay. Undergraduate?
Yes,
What are
I
you
have a
studying?
fine arts studio. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, but I have a brief engineering background though, which is like a little secret, but and doesn't really matter. But
Why doesn't it matter?
it really influences my work, the way I see things. But I don't know. It's not really going to get me anything. I don't know. It matters to me, but may not matter to my. Uh, it matters to me and also my practice, but it might not really matter to the way people perceive
Brick
my.
engineering. Tell me more.
No,
So,
a brief engineering background. Um,
brief engineering. Okay.
yeah. So yeah, so I did some mechanical engineering before I switched to School of Fine Arts, like both
Mm-hmm.
in Nigeria and also in Canada here. Um, so in a university called Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria for a year, and in Canada here for about a year and a half before I made a switch to
So,
fine art.
art.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me a little bit, just tangentially, how you can stitch together fine art and engineering. Because I think it's quite interesting. If you think of an artist like Oliver Ullison and the Da Vinci's of the world, they all had an engineering sort of basis, even though it wasn't called engineering at that point. You say that it's a very unremarkable thing, but I think it might be quite important.
Yeah, well, back in the day, like when you're talking about Da Vinci and the rest, then it was just philosophy. Philosophy was lots of stuff. It was and it was engineering and it was architecture and it was painting. Um, Lots of sciences, merged all together, and it was great. And like there's like pros and cons to that idea. The idea was like things are relatable and things are relational, and you could like feed off each other. But also, it was missing specialized knowledge on particular things, or time to like really sit down on something. So yeah, it was this and that. But for me, yeah. So maybe I think that's why I really go about my practice the way I go about it. Whereas like I don't really um, see myself as this type of artist or that type of artist. Uh, I see myself as
As
I
an
see my
echo.
yeah, but also what do you think when you think of engineering is like it's basically problem solving, and
Hmm.
you have a problem and you're looking for a way to solve it, and you're looking for ways to make that easier accessible by the people, the masses. um and for arts, I see the conversation as a problem, or the whatever I want to convey as problem, and the materiality is just the way I go about it, or the tool. So it's like my approach. Whether I use this method or this formula, or use the other formula. So it's like the conversation is first, and then the way I go about it comes next. So I think in that way, there's that effect, uh, effect of like of thinking. Yeah, but also like there are also a lot of things that are quite important. Like I feel, and it's not just because of like I come from like a particular background. I think if an artist with multiple backgrounds
Hmm.
what I mean backgrounds, it might not be official or academic. It could be just interests in particular things, and and
Mm,
yeah, I think it just makes your lexicon richer.
it
Um,
really does.
yeah, and you
Um, go on.
and your way of seeing also. So
That's
yeah.
very important. The ways of seeing is a phrase that is in sort of enmeshed into my love of art and how I kind of perceive expression, because that book by John Berger was very instrumental in um, introducing me to the artistic gaze, you know, how one interacts and mingles with one with another. And it's a very simple book, but it makes a very complicated argument. Once you get it into your head, you can't unsee. And John Berger is an amazing human being, or was an amazing human being, and I had a bit of a fascination with him. And he's probably the reason why I wanted to originally study history of art, and then I got subsumed into studying English literature. Um, and that in itself isn't an accident. I think it was almost me wanting to kind of lengthen the breadth of my expression. And in lengthening the breadth of my expression, it encompassed a richer way of seeing the art, because it gives me the sort of, we say artimanhas in Portuguese, which means the handicraft, or the ability to see and perceive. Um, so tell me a little bit more about the different methods of problem solving you use. So I know you paint, I know you use sound, I know you use performance, I know you teach. So you also involve yourself in pedagogy. Give me the full range of your repertoire.
Yeah, something that's always expanding. But yeah, and it's also something that is interesting because of a 2 years from now, particular people knew me as purely a performance artist or purely a painter or purely something, you know. Was also interesting when people are able to understand or come across your other, style of work or other, type of work, not necessarily style, and have that conversations and also be caught up in the conversations these meetings also make with each other. So if I was to go through everything I've done so far and like the mediums I've exercised professionally, I would say video filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
My process as a filmmaker, or the style of filmmaking I do, or also me as a filmmaker also is very rooted on me in the past recording performances. So there are different, there's pure performance, and there's documentation of pure performance, and there's documentation and using video as a medium of curating a particular performance. So it's like you're tweaking particular things to evoke a particular emotions in the video, that was not really uh, available in a live performance, and stuff like that. So me documenting my performances really grew to being a filmmaker. But you mentioned some like painting and sound, but I've also done a lot of installation sculpture. And I had a show in 2019, which I would love to show again. And I'm going to talk to you about it, you and Asha, about that. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, but the show was installation, so like video, and sculptural installation, also with printmaking. So the particular printmaking was like screen print on handmade paper, which was later embossed with wood and with
Mm-hmm.
um, you know patterns or stuff like that. So I've done like sculptural work, printmaking work, video work, um, text work also. Text is also like an important part that's really coming up in my practice. Um, but yeah, I don't know if I've mentioned everything. But
Well, you use what is in your repertoire to
yeah,
use in order to how can I paint the picture for everyone, in
but
order
but
to go on,
no, sorry. In order to
in order to convey or solve the problem that you're trying to solve at the time.
exactly, and it's also something that's growing. In the sense like I really want to work with virtual reality. um,
Go.
yeah, but I'm just like learning what it is and also learning how to collaborate more. I think it's something that's important in art right now, where it's like there's just so much I am meant to know about VR, but also I could um,
Tap into someone else's knowledge and commission them.
exactly, exactly.
Well, there's so much to talk to you about. There's so much to get my teeth into in your practice. Um, Give me an idea about how you mentioned something very tangentially again, the fact that you don't feel like you're in a place that you can fully call home because it's someone else's home and it's transitory. Um, how does your transitory nature and apply to not just your work but your outlook on being part of a diaspora? And I used Fela Kuti's sound today because I was just thinking, zombie.
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking about what sort of music does Chukwudubem like, and what sort of position am I putting myself into, as in psychologically, before having a conversation with him.
Yeah, it's um well, it's easy. It's There's a tendency for kind of you to you know um yeah, as an immigrant, a Nigerian immigrant here in Canada, there's that tendency to pitch your tent and want to stay and um you know come over to the West. A lot of people want to do that because of what's happening for particular reasons.
Mm,
There are particular reasons why people there are reasons for migration. There's people migration from the southern U.S., the northern U.S., from Africa to Europe. There are reasons which are very bulky. It's not just aesthetic. There are particular reasons
mm,
for people moving to particular places. Um, but when people are engulfed in those reasons, there's a tendency to also forget uh, particular things, to not to take into context particular things. And Canada is very interesting in that sense. When I was coming to Canada, I actually thought, coming to Canada is like, going to Europe or going anywhere where the white man is, or the white people are. And, and it until I came to Canada and stayed for a while, then I kind of knew about like the indigenous owners of the land or the indigenous people or population. And I never perceived Canada as that. When I was in Nigeria, Canada was just like you know, going to Europe or going to so it really and slowly changed my perception on a lot of things, and especially because of this population of people are still suppressed and still um, are still going through a lot of violence, in their own land. And so, what does it mean if I also come as an immigrant and pitch my tent so firmly, you know, and
mm.
so you start thinking about things like consent and a lot of things. Um, so yeah, I started to start to imagine myself as somebody who is transient, who is a transient being, who is um, here, temporarily, and that's has aided my practice because of like um, I'm not just thinking about the city where I am in right now. I'm also able to, like, pick up my bag and, go do something in London. I'll pick up my bag and go do something in New York, pick up my bag and go do something in other parts of Africa. That way it's like, I'm able to, like, tap into, like, the globalization, which could be negative and positive at the same time, in different ways. But the global, market, in ways like I'm not taking too much space in a particular place, or, like, I don't know. It's a whole, like, real my presence, especially as an immigrant here in Canada. What does it mean? It's a very big question to unpack when you think about it, like, and its effects on my own side. So it's like my life, my family, Nigeria, but also, to Canada as, a colonial state, but also to the indigenous groups of people, like indigenous um, nations, here
Hmm.
in the Americas. So there's a whole thing, it takes years to think about.
It, it does, and I wasn't expecting a fully formed answer, but you in essence give me consent to ask you the following questions. So you say that, for example, that your relationship with Canada isn't just aesthetic,
Yeah. Um,
and I want to push that back on that. I think the relationship with Canada is aesthetic. The aesthetic is a feeling and not just a, how can I put it? And not just a visual thing. It's not just an audio visual thing. It's also a feeling, moreover. And I feel like your aesthetic consideration of the theme Canada and your onboarding of the theme Canada is a sublime aesthetic um, form of appreciating it because it's so complicated that it blinds you. Like if you were looking at the top of a snowy capped mountain, like your eyes are literally blinded by the the expanse and the whiteness of it all. No pun intended there.
yeah. Yeah, a lot of puns attended. That's welcome. A lot of whiteness. Um, um, when I say not just aesthetic, I mean, it's aesthetic, but beyond. It's more than that. It's not just about the feeling. It's more. It's about um, their particular reasons that are not just about today or yesterday. Why I came here, there's the particular reasons why they're essential reasons that are based on survival, uh, that migration actually, hangs on, and those reasons are not just confined to me alone or accessed by me alone. Those reasons are built on, family, and having a quote unquote better life because of particular failed systems. And it's just a whole big cycle because of these failed systems are also as a result of, particular imperialist states, which Canada was one of them. So we're escaping
The aftermath of
the aftermath
imperialism by going
by going to an
by
imperialist state. Exactly. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the funny cycle.
Imagine
So
being at the epicenter of imperialism where they don't even recognize imperialism
exactly,
exists.
exactly. So it's an interesting, but I agree with you. It's there's an aesthetic to it, and but it's more than that. It's survival. You know, um, it's it's so that, like, my my brothers or my cousins' kids have more options. Not just about if I have kids, then my kids also, but, like, it goes beyond me. There are a lot of reasons. It's not sometimes it's not convenient. Yeah, in the sense that I don't come from um yeah, I don't really have to go into that, but like I don't come from the wealthiest Nigerian family. I don't come from like the but it's kind of necessary, and it's kind of like a almost like an investment to
Mm.
yeah.
I understand that that particular predicament. You know, yeah, I'll leave it at that because
Yeah,
sometimes it's good to leave things up to the imagination.
exactly.
But we've got to the point where I get to ask you about what you're reading.
Oh, a couple of things, and
A
I don't know.
couple only? Only two?
uh, I don't know if you saw, but in my I've been doing a kind of virtual performance intervention where I
Hmm.
asked people to buy me books, and they
You are a virtual what do you call yourself? A virtual fungible token?
oh, non-fungible token. But yeah, so yeah, so people have been buying me books, and really, I really want to really go. I came across the work of Terry Atkins a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, and I even wrote about it, and like I was so really really interested in it. Because of, and the reason why I was interested in it was because of like I at that particular time I was doing particular things that like I felt were um, I won't say similar, but had some connections. I was kind of working with
Hmm.
sound, I was working with installation, you know. So Terry Atkins was a place knowing that there's if I'm talking about sound as an artist, I'm not just referring to like a white man. I'm not just referring to Kandinsky and Schoenberg,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
yeah, so it's interesting to have like Terry Atkins as someone to kind of look at his work, and he kind of died in the mid 2000s. Yeah, looking at his work was some very very interesting. I've been getting a lot of his books recently. Another person I've really been interested in is Martin Pruitt. I've been really getting his books, also really going into his books. Um, Another person I've been really looking at is the work of Fiesta Gates, not just his
Mm.
his ceramic work, but also his work with community and a lot of stuff. Um, but with all this, you can piece and understand the direction of my work. uh, but what I'm really reading right now is I'm rereading something. I'm rereading Anifia Lobren's The Dysgraphist. I hope that's how you pronounce it, The Dysgraphist. Um, but apart from that, also I'm reading a lot of like books like for they are more like what do you call books of exhibitions, like essays and photographs. Yeah,
Catalogs.
catalog. So I really love catalogs for Wange Chimutu because I'm writing an essay about Wange Chimutu. So I've been gathering a lot of catalogs on her work. I'm also reading a lot of like contemporary art books, like themes of contemporary art, which is one of them.
You
Um,
need to share that reading list with me privately. I don't think anyone else needs it,
yeah,
but I want to continue having this conversation offline.
yeah,
I'm actually thinking because everyone loves a good little exclusive. I'm thinking of doing the same thing as you did for my birthday in terms of books.
yeah, yeah.
Because it was such a great idea that I'm going to quote you and lift from you, and I want to find out how the interaction of that is going because I've seen you've been getting books, so
Yeah, a lot.
I'm sure I'll get coal for my birthday, but you
Yeah.
know.
So the interesting thing is that also there's agency in which the audience has in that quote unquote performance because of they choose the books. So have like a link tree with like links to where the book can be bought and everything. And I send to them so they have the agency to actually choose the books and buy the books and send them to you. And what that does to me, or how I see it, is like they have that choice of investing in you as a person in a very specific way, not in a generalized
Mm,
uh, um,
mm.
way. So
And I enjoy that concept very much. and we'll continue having this discussion.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a question in the question box. So, guys, I've got to the bit where I ask you to ask me questions, but I also get Chukwudubem to ask me questions. We've got to that bit of the interview. And if anyone is in any way disposable for coming on the live with us and asking the question via the live question function, you're more than welcome to. Just be very clear that this is a non-pitching zone, and it's purely good vibes only, and I will vet your profile. So if you have a weird picture on it, uh, don't don't think that I'm going to allow you just to come up on stage and speak to us. Let's see what's in the question box. Denise just said that we're looking fine, apparently.
Thank you, Dennis.
Great. So, do you have any questions for me?
Hmm. So my question to you is like, what's the state of curating in London?
The state of curation. I think there's a lot of people that call themselves curators, but have no idea about what curation means. And that by itself tells you a lot about the state of curation. Um, Curation is an extension of an artistic practice. A curator may not produce their own work, but in the production of others' work, a curator adds the final bow on top of the work that allows it to sort of sit within a wider lateral field. The work is a vertical, and the artist is a vertical, and the curator is a horizontal, because the curator does the logistics. The curator does a lot more than pose in front of pictures. And there I'm taking the piss out of myself and no one else. But curatorial practice is something I take very seriously, and something that I engage with in a way that is unconventional, because I'm not of the academy or the traditional artistic um, academic churn out schools of heteroglossia and blah 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 and Bakhtin and scissor and all of that. I am of that school, but from a different perspective, and that gives me a different language from which I can onboard all of these themes and create a mise en scène for the works to exist in relation to others, and moreover, act as a pastoral support for an artist.
Wow. And how has that been? Thanks a lot. You just kind of really, really painted the picture of what a curator is, or what a curator should be. Um, and also I really enjoyed the way you stated clearly that curating itself is an art form, which is
Mm.
you know a lot of times not seen as that. It's not about throwing a couple of things
It's a
together.
vocation at the end
Yeah,
of the day.
yeah,
Um, the curator works as a, I think the term is a Latin term. So if I go into the Latin excavation or the Latin archaeology of the word curate, curate means to put a bandage over something. So in essence, when it was the time of the of Christian martyrs and the like in the Roman period, you'd have people who'd go around being putting a bandage on things, and stopping wounds from bleeding. So we were the original epistemes. We were the original doctors, and we were the ones who would have the knowledge of the occult and the knowledge of the sciences, and a curator in essence still operates under that auspice of, in essence, bandaging it back, but allowing it to still live. Larry Osemensa said, not Larry Osemensa, Larry Achenpong said something along the lines of, if the rock isn't broken, you can't stitch. If the rock is broken, you can't stitch. And I take that as a very philosophical way of understanding what is going on in the curatorial canon, because we're always working with disparate, broken schemas, especially when it comes to understanding what an artist's practice is, and we're there to provide a bodysuit and an armor, and be the artist's friend, confidant, encourager, and ultimately sometimes their legacy. But to answer your question about curation in London, I see it in two ways. I feel like, as I said before, there are people who call themselves curators but have no right, no claim, because they do nothing but self-promote. And there are people who actually are curators, you know, the Bissy Silvers of the world, the Zoe Whitleys of the world, you know, those people are exist within our ecosystem and need to be celebrated.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. Something that's also been a very, very big part of my practice, but also not just my practice, but I'll say a communal practice where I am right now is creating spaces that are detached from the academy. Academy. I don't know if you know about, like, after the French Revolution, or during the Impressionist times, you had the academy, the Salon des Refusés, like the kind of
The
a space for,
Refuseniks
yeah,
Society.
yes.
Yeah.
So and when I think about the recent conversation, and I used to be part of the conversation of really getting Black art into these institutions, a lot of institutions, and this inclusive discussion. But recently, I have been in a position, a space of community coming together to creating our own space to house our own the works of artists. And this has been a very big conversation that's been going on, not just in Winnipeg, but also in all over Canada, creating spaces, non-conventional spaces outside the salon, outside the academy. So I'm trying. Is there the same conversations been going on like that in the UK?
In the UK,
Spaces.
um, we have institutions like the Black Cultural Archives that are currently in a state of distress because they're not being provided for in the way that they should be, even though they are part of, how can I put it, the wider frameworks of British society. So, or the British artistic patchwork. So I would say the conversations you're having are probably very related to the trajectory that we face here in the UK in terms of, because I know you're also a curator.
Yeah.
So that in itself, I say gives you so many different bows from which to attack the situation. And my real answer to that is we are continuously in a state of pushing back and pushing forward. But we can also not erase the history, the living history of those who came before us in our struggles, And I feel like, to an extent, there needs to also be a Canadian excavation of the Black voices that have come before you and may have floundered because of institutional racism rather than, you know, through lack of speaking or through lack of doing. That in itself needs to be appurated and needs to be looked at because there are you probably find both black and indigenous voices in that mix, you know, of people who are not being offered enough sustenance, who are not offered enough sustenance in their lifetimes. And there are probably older Canadian black artists who are still not given the sustenance. I know you only had recently um, a, a, a person who happens to be black reach the position of being a dean at one of your universities, which is something very shocking because Canada has had a relationship with blackness that is beyond its empire and exists in flux. I don't know as much about it as you do, but being part of the British Empire, Canada
It's a
is
cousin.
laterally is a colony, but it's also a kith and kin country. You know, it has all of those hierarchical positionalities. But there's also a question by Chip Daddy, which also relates to what we're discussing. Chip Moody, sorry. How do you incorporate? Anyway, let me start again. How do you go about incorporating a new material medium to your toolkit? Research versus expression.
Is that for me or you?
That's for you.
Well, I think both.
That's for both of us, but you can say whatever you need to say.
But I think but also his question, research versus expression, is also both.
Mm.
You can none of them are isolated. But as a curator or an artist, I feel research only remains research if it's not, I think the expression is adding to the research or working off your research. Um, um, yeah, but there are particular, I don't know if you noticed, but one of somebody who joined, I don't know if she's still here, is Lori Blondo, and she is a very seminal artist to the Canadian art world, and she works interdisciplinary, and recently she was awarded, um, and I'm lucky to have known her and for a while right now, and I really like how she uses like multiple mediums, or how she approaches medium, or how she thinks about medium in general, and how one medium could be an extension, a continuation of another medium. For example, if she maybe has a performance or whatnot, and she, took photographs in that performance, and uh, she's done stuff before where it's like she uses gel image transfer to image, like transfer those images from the performance to rocks, like actual rocks, and
Mm.
these rocks are not like, she's indigenous, so she's an indigenous artist, so it's not just it's there are a lot of reasons and a lot of research and specification to what type of rocks and the positioning those rocks are in, and how that installation of this rock over a body of water continues the conversation of that performance. So it's like
Can you ever step in the same water once, more than once?
what do you say?
Can you ever step in the same water more than once?
Step in the same water more than once? Can you break that down for me? I'm not smart enough to
Yes,
understand.
you are. I'm asking you, if you're in a stream, can you ever step in the same stream more than once?
um
And if the water's running underneath your feet, are you stepping
yeah.
in the same water more than once?
Oh, I don't know. I think you sink, or if you step, I don't know. I don't. If can you step in the same water more than once? No, I don't know. What's the answer for that? Like from
I
I'm
don't
thinking.
I don't think there is an answer. It's a philosophical question. I
Yeah,
just
I'm
wanted to
thinking
put that
about
out
the more
to you.
literal way also. Like if you step into the water, you kind of like sink if you just step into the water. Um,
Hmm.
but I would love to hear you break down that philosophical that question.
The question is more to do with the idea of performance and putting rocks back into water and so on and so forth. And it's also about the animistic quality of the river. Can you ever step into the same river more than once?
Mm,
When the fact that a river or a body of water is always turning and has a life of its own, you may have your feet in that sunken state, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're stepping into the same river.
mm,
Um, but that's the encouragement I want to give you. But in terms of research versus expression, I'm a posser, I'm a ceramicist, a little bit like Fiesta Gates. So I could even give you a run for your money at some point. But that's not really a thing for me currently. It's more about becoming more. One of the best lyrics in Pocahontas. That's very true. It comes probably comes from that also, and that's probably where I thought of it. Thank you, John Sharples. Um, but that's me answering that question. There are a few more questions in your question box thing. As an artist that has uh, immigrated, do you immediately feel a responsibility to connect your practice with the history of, well, of those who came before you? Is probably what he's trying to ask.
I can't see the totality of the question. But
Nor
yeah,
could I.
yeah, but yeah, I think if we're not getting your question, you can comment just on the comment to just complete your question. But I I think it's like recently I've also been thinking about like the idea of identity as something that is in flux. Identity as
Hmm.
something that is uh, not linear, not only about race, not all, it could be more, you could, everybody has multiple identities, and they're like all like these Venn diagrams of who you are and who you're not, and even partially what you are and what you're not, you could be, what does it mean if you are, Christian and homosexual, when the Christian body is quite homophobic, but it's still part of the identity. So it's like the idea of like creating identity. Identity is also created, the and stuff like that. So as an immigrant who come here, who could like travel here, there's that creation of who you are and identity that's always also not um, um, that's also not stable. It's also
Hmm.
evolving, and you identify with, um, immediately with particular people, with other Africans who are here who are not probably Nigerians. You identify with black people who are here. You identify with the young people. You identify with maybe people with particular ideas, philosophical ideas, ideological backgrounds. You identify with like it's a lot of stuff. You identify with like identify with artists, and so when asking your questions from that idea of people who are here before me, it also ties down to identity. So people who are like me came here before me. So when I think about that, I think about of the black artists, or the artists, particularly the sculptors who are here before me. It's not just a direct question. But if it's about race, because that's where identity is always mostly talked about, uh, unfortunately, um, there's been a lot of like black artists and indigenous artists or marginalized artists who have been in Canada before me, and that I've been studying recently, and also reaching out to speak with recently too, because of like it's almost like they at their time they didn't have the luxury that we have. What we have right now is the luxury of like at least even though we're still marginalized, we they went through a particular uh, choking or suffocating marginalization, where it's like their work uh, maybe even though might be better than ours and filled with a lot of research like ours or whatever, didn't get to the same heights that we got right now. So there's that continuation of like conversation physically, like via discourse, like talking to particular people, or also just researching their work and feeding off and continuing a conversation and referencing their work in your work also is also a way of continuing a
Keeping
conversation.
them alive.
Exactly. But the funny thing is like, these people might, not necessarily be of, Nigerian descent. They might be of like Caribbean descent. So it's like a lot of conversation and just, yeah, I've just spoken what I've just said right now is just recently also as a result of my idea of wrap my head around what identity is and, how identity is, um, yeah, always in motion.
Amazing. Do you think personal history background is a vital part of an artist/curator's practice?
Do you want to go with that first? Do you want to go for that first?
I'll go with it first. I think you can't divorce your background, your epistemic, how can I put it, groundings from your real understanding of an artist's work. Because the way that I see it is, you end up bringing to you bring your positionality to a work and you complete it. So work by itself is unable to be completed until you activate it in your mind to complete that one work. And that's the way I see it. So as an artist, you have within yourself a whole embassy of ideas, like a whole armada of ways of tackling things, but they all come down to one specific iteration, one specific gesture, one specific moment that you're trying to capture. Whereas the curator is vertical, no, is a horizontal, and the artist is a vertical. So they intersect at a certain point when it comes to expression and allowing for a better understanding of that work. And your individual background, I would say, is as important as the artists,
Yeah.
because they come together to create an idea of the work, and they write into history.
Well, I agree with you, and just add to that, which like I apologize because of like the way I talk about things is from a point of theory, like I kind of go.
Why do you have to apologize for
No,
talking
I
about it
have,
from a point of
I kind
view?
of go in different directions to make sense of one thing instead of like answering directly. Because I think that's the only way I could incorporate like particular things into the conversation. Um, and when you talk about background also, it's also, for example, like I grew up in Nigeria. I came here, when I was like fully formed, when I was a man already. Um, so my background really is really like Nigerian, and also a few years I've spent here, and so it's like that's part of me, and it's also part of like the language of my expression, and it's like it's a lot of stuff. But I also think about a lot of people also perhaps who are not, who are from maybe a background of maybe Caribbean background, or like an African background, who were born here and grew up here, or also who feel that they don't want to be part of like their literal background is Canadian, but they want to divorce from the they want to divorce from the colonial um,
Project.
projects, yeah, and really connect to their background, and which their background is uh, to their mother or their father, and so they make a lot of research, and they probably some of them go back and they so it's like so they make their real their blood background more visible in their work and whatnot. So in that sense also the idea of background is also subjective, and like background also could mean I know a lot of times backgrounds was talked about in in like let's say in love stuff even but for people of color I'm going to say this and I'm going to say this for white people and black and people of color for white people your background could be anything. It could be what the kind of things you're into right now, your politics or whatnot. But for people of color sometimes we are sometimes trapped to being making a background just where we are from, and sometimes always referencing to the past and not referencing the future. And something I've studied about recently is always referencing to like animistic,
Beliefs.
yeah. Instead of and it's almost like we're living in the past. And when you say your background could also be your way of thinking right now, what you've been reading and whatnot, and like thinking about on space and stuff like that. And also there's also when it comes to people of color, also there's that tendency to be essentialist and to be very general.
Overly prescriptive
Yeah. So
with that idea.
yeah, so it's like oh, he's Nigerian, so before we have a show of him in the MoMA, it has to be very Nigerian and very it's almost, it comes to the idea of the other, the idea of the other before you can get a Grammy for the world uh, um the world section. It has to be really not English or not even though we are living in a very globalized state, there's still that othering, there's still that place where institutions kind of think about things from a place of voyeur, a place of
Voyeurism, yeah. Exoticization.
exercise. And so I say it's a very complex question also. And I'll say for artists, I would say I just hope that artists are bringing things from their background racially and ethnically in their own terms, in their own terms to make sense of other things or particular things, and not pushed to do that or feel obligated to do that.
Amazing. And there's another question. I'll see if it's relevant. Okay, that's the same question we just answered. Da, da, da. It leaves me to just thank you, really. We've done the questions, we've done the answers, we've done the dancing around the maypole, and we've come to the end of our live, and it has been an extraordinary live. I would like to thank you so very much, Mr. Chukwudubem, for coming on here and discussing your practice with such an open and direct lens. I hope to work with you in the future and see what the rest of this can spawn into.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me in your space and creating space for me, and also and thanks to everybody who joined. But thank you, Eduardo, for the work you're doing and for this moment.
Yes, now I can leave you to go off and eat.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Next month now, I'll be celebrating a whole baby 1 year of doing lives. So there might be some surprises that I might be able to bring out of my underneath my sleeves. But until then, um, I'll leave you guys to sort of imagine what I could bring up and continue thanking Chukwudubem for being a sweetie and a person who has made this week uh, a highlight. So, guys, goodbye.
Before we say goodbye, I just want to say people who are commenting right now are artists who are based in Canada and all artists of color. So,
Even better.
yeah. But somebody just messaged me right now with a question.
What is it?
Uh, they were like, my question didn't get chosen. But
Really?
I said my question didn't get chosen.
Oh, okay, okay, let's see.
Uh, and he was
I
like,
think I
oh,
found it.
yeah. Oh my God. Do you ever think?
Interesting question. You can answer that one.
Yeah, yeah, it's also interesting that a lot. I'll answer that question briefly from a point where it's interesting as an art historian, which you are also.
Mm,
Um, it's interesting how particular works are spoken of in posterity, um, uh, and a lot of times out of the context of when they were alive. Uh, you know, where it's like in art history books 100 years from now, if if I get to be in the art history books, which is like like I don't know, if anybody gets to be in the art history books, like are you misquoted? Are you recontextualized in very interesting ways? I don't really ponder about it, but it's something that I would say most of the time I only just focus on while I'm alive, and anything that happens when I'm dead happens. But I don't know. It's interesting. What of you?
I think that death is a new beginning,
Hmm.
and at the end of the day, when we're thinking about death and identities and where our souls go, we need to look at what's going on Earth, you know? um, because that's probably where we're gonna end up going back to.
Yeah.
Earth unto earth, dust unto dust, and all of that. And we're gonna be fungigated by fungus.
You just making me think about NFTs and non-fungible.
Yeah,
Even though they have nothing to do with each other, just the way they are pronounced just makes me just laugh. But yeah, uh,
yeah.
offline, we have to still talk about the new findings of that Bible. Yeah, we'll talk
Oh
about
my
that.
God, yeah. We'll have a chat
Yeah,
about all of that. But guys, again, I must leave you,
yeah,
because I think two 1.5 hours is
it's great.
good going enough.
Yeah.
If I had gone to the bathroom, it'd have been longer, but now I need to go.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Okay. Thanks a lot, and we're gonna continue talking um as time goes. Have a good
We
day.
will. Goodbye.
Bye.